Today we're going to do the paper chromatography, and the purpose is to separate leaf pigments. Okay, so we're in photosynthesis, we're talking about leaf pigmentation, why chlorophyll appears green, things like that. So what I have here is chromatography paper, a spinach leaf, a quarter, a pencil to make my mark, and I have a graduated cylinder that has a tiny amount of liquid in there, because this is a very volatile liquid, so it doesn't take very much of it, okay? So what we're gonna do, number one, I try not to handle the paper. I'm trying to handle it by the edges. Any oils that are on my hands would transfer to that paper. Our instructions today say to measure up from the bottom approximately 1.5 inches. So that's approximately, okay? From that knuckle to that knuckle right there is about 1 inch, so I can always go, yeah. So I'm gonna put a very light line. This is just a guide, okay? Because I wanna take my spinach leaf, lay it over that line, take my quarter, and I want to roll it, not scrape it, but roll it 15 times. So there's one, and you can see I'm starting to get some green on there. What I'm doing is I'm taking the pigmentation and I'm mashing it out of the leaf, and I'm moving the leaf every time I'm doing this so I can get fresh pigment there. And I'm rolling it across right there. Want to be able to get my pigment on roughly the same line. So I just want to keep doing that. The reason I don't want to scrub is this chromatography paper is really porous, and if I put too much pressure on it, then it literally would fall apart, okay? It's not, quite like tissue paper or toilet paper or anything like that. It feels like a nice heavyweight paper, but it is exceedingly porous, okay? So I keep moving this around so I can get plenty of plant pigment into that. I think a couple of more little rolls right here, and I'll be good to go. Actually, I think that's enough right there, okay? So I've got this. Now I'm gonna take this, and the only time I pull this foil off the top is either when I'm putting this in or pulling it out, because the fumes that are in here are pretty noxious. So I slide that down in there, and it just barely touches. I don't put the line in the liquid. I just set the bottom of the paper in the liquid, okay? I'm gonna try not to move it very much. And I'm gonna leave it sitting there, and over a period of probably about 20 minutes or so, we're gonna watch it wick up the paper, okay? Okay, I'm going to remove this now. It's been running for a while. I'm going to pull that up out of there, lay that down for a second, close that back up, set it over there, and I'm going to take this and lay it on a sheet of white paper, and we're going to take some measurements here in just a minute. So we have run the spinach leaf and gotten the pigments to separate out on our chromatography paper. So here's my strip of chromatography paper, and now my lab tells me I need to do some measuring, okay? So it wants to know, how far did the color travel? Well, here's where I put my spinach pigments right here, okay? So I want to measure from that line, and by the way, we measure metrically, so I'm using centimeters. So I'm measuring from that line all the way up to where the color stops, okay? So the color went, I'm looking at 10.3, okay? So I'm gonna write it down, 10.3 centimeters. That's how far the color traveled, okay? Then it asks how far did the solvent travel. So we're not going to overthink that. What happens is the solvent was where the very tip of this was placed. So we need to slide our ruler down to measure from the bottom of the paper up to where the color is. So that measures 13.7. So that one is 13.7 centimeters, okay? So the color travel was 10.3, the solvent travel was 13.7, and now it says to calculate the RF value. So it's a refraction index. We do the distance the pigment traveled. So the pigment is the color, so it's that one, and the distance, the solvent right there. Okay, so basically I can take that right there and do division. And my RF, I'm not going to do that, you get to do that, equals that in centimeters, right? So that's the measuring part of this lab. Then it's going to ask you to list the colors and their pigment name. So I've given that to you in the lab. You'll see that in the lab. But I want to show you this right here. Here is all of my pigmentations right there. Okay, I'll show you. There's all the pigments. That's where I rolled the quarter. And then I'm getting these different colors all the way up to the very top. So let's take a little look at those. I'm going to say I've got 4 colors I'm looking at here. I've got yellow, orange, yellow-green, and blue-green. And the reason they travel different lengths is the size of the molecule. Think of it like this. If you have somebody that is really big, they run slower than somebody that's really small. So that's the way these molecules move through the things that we're going to look at this year is the smaller molecules run faster than the big molecules. All right, so right here is going to be the tip of my yellow-green, and it looks like the highest part on my blue-green is right there. And again, I'll show you a little closer here. So I have basically a line right here that squiggles up and down. That is my yellow-green. And then I have my blue-green, and there's the highest point right there. And then it's hard to see. That's why we lay it on white paper. It gives us a little easier way to see this. It's very, very faint, but right about there is where my next color is. And my next color is yellow, so it ends right there. And then my last one is the orange, and the orange is way up there, okay? So it's asking me to list the colors on my chromatogram, which is this, list the colors and the pigment name. So you're going to have 2 things from the bottom to the top. So your first one is going to be the bottom one, okay? And on your lab, I have the colors as well as their technical name. There's chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, carotene, get it? Carotene, carrots, orange, and yellow. Yellow is xanthophyll, okay? So if you have any questions, give me a shout either on WebEx or email.